Who loves cheese? Hands up. I love cheese too. And I guess I always did. And I remember when love became passion. In November 2012, I used to work as a market researcher in brand and advertising. And in one of my lunch breaks, I went to my favorite cheese shop and I picked my favorite cheese. And I asked one of the staff members if I could get the details of their cheesemaker, Mary Holbrook. And I wrote her an email and I plainly asked if she could teach me how to make cheese, because I love cheese. And I clearly didn't love my job. So I handed in my notice. 3 months later, I drove to Bath. She picked me up from the station and we drove together to her farm in Somerset. And I made cheese and I was in heaven. For those who don't know, cheese is made of milk. Just milk. One would think milk turned into a really beautiful handcrafted product. And making cheese sounds actually quite simple. You need a starter culture, bacteria to sour the milk, and you need rennet, an enzyme that helps you to separate the whey from the curd, and then the curd, the solid matter, needs salt, and then you need time. But what I've seen live happening in the cheese room felt like a miracle to me. Meeting the cheesemaker, meeting Mary Holbrook, and making cheese was a complete revelation to me. I had such a great time, and it was such a good experience, but it was a hard work. It was bloody hard physical work, and it really requires stamina. Your days are really long. You start very early in the morning and start milking the animals, and then you clean the milking parlor. You prepare the milk, you heat it, you make the cheese, which is a tiny part of your whole day. And you clean the cheese room, you wash the molds, you salt the cheese, you drain the cheese, you turn the cheese, you go out on the fields and feed your pig, you feed your animals, you go back in the cheese room, you move the cheese to the maturium, you dry them, and in the evening you go out and milk the animals again. But it is so worth it. Just imagine you create something with your own hands, something really delicious, something tangible, and something you're proud of after a really long day of hard work. And I think it's most likely that a lot of cheesemakers nowadays experienced the same when they decided to drop their careers and start making cheese. People like Randolph Hutchinson knows what it takes to be a cheesemaker. He is one, and he is now the owner of a business what started once as a very small cheese shop in London in the early 80s, where they made yogurt on the side. And he was looking to buy and to sell more cheeses, but back then there wasn't really good farmhouse cheese available. Cheese producers were under pressure of EU rules to standardize the milk, to pasteurize the milk, and basically cheese was made in a factory. So what he did, he jumped in a car and he went on a journey in England to find good farmhouse cheese, like-minded cheesemakers who produce cheese with integrity, cheese that has a story, tasted individual, expressed the flavor of the milk. And he found them. And he even encouraged them to not pasteurize and to not give in on powerful supermarkets to pasteurize milk. And he promised to keep on selling their cheeses nevertheless. And he encouraged them to make cheeses the traditional way. And that worked really well, obviously. And today I'd like to share Randolph's idea behind the passion of cheese, because it's my passion too. What Randolph started in the early 80s became the base of how the business still works today. Keep close contact to the cheesemaker, to our customers, and most important, to the cheese itself. And by close contact, I don't mean we just pick up the phone and call the cheesemaker once a year saying hi, send a picture how the cheese looks on the counter. No. Why are those relationships so important, and how do they work? As I mentioned, cheesemakers work really hard to fulfill their dreams, but they have to make a living. Did you know that you need 250 liters of milk to produce 1 wheel of cheddar? 25 kilo. That's a 10% yield. Parmigiano, 5% yield. My cheesemaker friend Mary Holbrook told me in the very beginning, don't you dare to think you're going to make a fortune of this. That's true. A lot of cheesemakers, they don't have the time and the capacity to finalize their cheeses, to mature their cheeses, to promote their cheeses themselves, and to sell their cheeses. They have to run a farm 7 days a week, 16-hour days. They have to feed a family as well. So of course, the solution to produce really fast, huge quantities, low quality is simple, but that's truly not what those cheesemakers are after. Imagine you were a cheesemaker. And let's say you make a traditional cheese, like those British farmhouse cheeses that have a long history. Only 100 years ago, there used to be over 300 raw milk traditional cheddars made in Somerset, over 400 traditional Cheshire makers, huge amounts of Lancashire makers. We call those cheeses territorial cheeses. They are cheeses that are made, they are named after a place they've been made, and they're very unique for the region and the area. Compare it with terroir in the world of wine. And after the Second World War and pasteurization was invented, those cheeses almost died out. And now you are the cheesemaker or one of the producers who are making the last 3 cheddars. You're the producer who's making the last traditional cloth-bound raw milk Cheshire. Or you're a cheesemaker like Graham, whose mum, Mrs. Kirkham's, passed on to him the cheesemaking of the last cloth-bound raw milk Lancashire, Mrs. Kirkham's Lancashire. Now let's assume something goes wrong with the milk, or on the farm, cows getting sick, or even worse, Randolph just decides to stop making that cheese because he can't be bothered. It's just bloody hard work. And there won't be no Lancashire left. There's no other Lancashire to replace it and to sell it in the end. And same goes for other cheeses as well. What would you do as a cheesemaker? What would you hope for? What would you ask for? See, the problem is there will always be things occurring like your cow's getting sick, your milk is not curdling, the cheese make went wrong, the cheese is moldy, it doesn't look attractive. How are you going to sell it? And to whom? So wouldn't it be great if there was someone who represents you, who supports you, who has the same passion, who is like-minded like you, and who spreads the word and makes your cheese available to the right people? Someone who buys your cheeses, even though you're going through a phase of less quality good cheeses, because they believe in you and they have confidence that you're going to make great cheeses, and they help you to get the best out of your milk. So this is now our challenge, and a challenge we love to take on for the cheesemakers, for us, but also for the customers. Today we are selling and buying cheese, farm cheeses from now around 70 cheesemakers from around Britain and Ireland with a passion and diligence and devotion I have never seen before. And of course it took years and years and years of hard work and patience and investing and observing and a lot of failure and mistakes. But the constant and collective effort to always try to improve the cheese, make the cheese better, keep close relationships to the cheesemaker is what drives us. Now, how does it look when the maker meets the monger? Actually, our relationship with the cheesemaker is very much collaborative. A cheesemaker comes up with an idea about a cheese and approaches us and asks us for help, or the other way around. So we might encourage someone to make a great cheese. So we see each other quite regularly in visits, every month, a couple of times a year, but we see each other face to face. And that enables us to give direct feedback about the cheese and how the cheese is received on the counter by the customer, because he or she can't be there. But also, we exchange really valuable information. For example, why is your cheese so dry at the moment? Last month we made such a great cheese that rind was delicious. Is your dry room broken? Any change in feeds or in milk? Do you have new staff? Or did you just experiment? And through those visits and revisits, we we learned to understand how each variety is produced, but also we get the quality we want in the cheese. And this is what Randolph did 35 years ago, and this is how we still do it. Remember I talked a bit about Graham Kirkham, the one who's making the Lancashire cheese. I'd like to introduce you to another cheese hero, Joe Schneider. When I said that Randolph went on a cheese journey to find great cheese, he was also back then looking for a raw milk Stilton as a traditional blue cheese. And it took him years and years to find someone who would follow him. In Joe Schneider, he found a great cheesemaker he believed in and helped to set up to produce such a traditional cheese, which is called Stichelton. And you're going to have some later. Please be patient. And another of our cheese heroes is James Montgomery. James is one of those last 3 producers of a Somerset farmhouse cheddar. Just to name a few, there are so many others. And this is how it looks when the cheese is ready to eat and comes into our shops. Our shops look quite rustic, and our customers always get the feeling of being in a farmhouse and assuming, oh my God, this is all organic produce here. But actually, with some exceptions, there isn't. Also, customers love to point out, excuse me, I think you have a water leak at the bottom here. If you see that picture here on the left-hand side, you see that water. It's true, there is, the concrete floor is soaked of water to maintain the required humidity for the cheese. And we also have a shower in the left-hand side of the shop to wash all the cheesemongers, our staff. We don't. It is there to keep humidity for the cheese. And since the cheese is sitting there on the shelves all day long, the shower runs 24 hours too. All the walls are full of shelves which are holding those all sorts of hard cheeses. They have little labels with names and the batch dates, and they're waiting there to be cut open or even to mature. The shop's really cold, 12 to 14 degrees. It's bloody cold actually when it comes to winter. If you ever need recommendations in thermal underwear, ask us. We are prepared. And you might think that we might wear beautiful, comfortable Birkenstocks or clogs. We have to wear those. They're super heavy. We get really smelly and sticky feet, and they're very heavy because they have at the top here a metal plate. No one wants 25 kilos of cheese dropping on your feet. So the whole purpose of the shop is based on function, and it's designed for only one single purpose: cheese. Not for customers and not for us cheesemongers. Speaking of which, those are cheesemongers. Well, this is how we called. And I'm a cheesemonger, and these are my colleagues. And in addition to those wellies you've just seen, we are wearing a hat. And we usually don't wear microphones. And so I was trying to look up the word cheesemonger, but that's actually not really a translation. I think ein Käseverkäufer doesn't really do it. So the cheese we pick as a cheesemonger in a day, we just taste them, and it's probably the cheese we like best that day. And we do this all day long. We look after the cheese all day long. It's so important to know about taste and flavor. How does the cheese taste today? How will it develop in the next couple of weeks? That's why you see us in the shops tasting cheese all the time, and we encourage our customers to do the same. Now, in a world where people are seeking and looking for the perfect foods, the perfect shaped apple, a perfect piece of cheese, I believe that it is really, really important that you are selling honest. Why deny mistakes or failure or imperfection? We are still talking about a handcrafted, a handmade food. Things do go wrong when you make food. That's the beauty of farmhouse cheese, like I said. And we appreciate that, and we even celebrate it. And I'll show you how it works and what I mean. So I brought a piece of cheese today. This is a piece of cheddar, and it's a bit bruised. Do you see that brown bit on the cheese over there, and it has these blue veins. Not the perfect looking cheese. Would you know how it tastes? Would you buy it? Some of you might not want to buy it because it looks so ugly on a cheese board. That's why it's so important that we sell or we taste the cheese actually to know how what it means. So what I do, I've picked that cheese, I particularly like that blue here, and I taste it out to my customer. And we share it. Really nice. It's a good batch, Montgomery's May. And I take my time to explain my customer why his or her favorite cheese looks and tastes so different from last week or last month. So yes, the blue's edible. These blue beans, it's a natural blue, and it happens when the cloth that the cheese is wrapped in cracks, and air gets in, and it oxidizes. And it produces quite interesting flavors. It's not wanted by the cheesemaker, but it happens. I quite like it. And frankly speaking, it doesn't matter how it looks like, it's the flavor that counts. Still, if my customer is still hesitant, I'm really happy to cut a clean piece of cheese because it leaves them with a good feeling that in the evening they unwrap the cheese and share a beautiful and delicious piece of cheese with their families. And I'm very confident they are coming back for more. Now, how the heck did they do it? Was the market researcher in me asking when I joined a few years ago. The business doesn't even have a marketing budget. They don't have any media plans. They don't follow any trends, no zero-fat cheese, no organic produce. And frankly, cheese is not even a cool product, right? I think a great product sells itself. If you think of supermarkets, cheese comes in vacuum packed in slices. We just show the pure product. The shape and the size has been made on the farm. It's just whole cheese. And I think this is a really fine tribute to the amazing work cheesemakers do. It's the taste and the quality of a product that spreads the word. Now I hope I could give you an idea today what is so special about this approach. Namely that passion is great, it's really great, but it's nothing worth without honest and really good relationships and support. Maybe you see it like in a marriage, the maker and the monger going through thick and thin together in good and in bad times. And my vision, and I wish for the future, there would be more such companies, there would be more such brave people, because only then we can maintain and preserve those old cheese-making traditions and those unique cheeses. And I also hope a bit that you understand a bit better that a well-made and delicious cheese, it doesn't matter how it looks like. Next time you go in a cheese shop, I'd love you to pick and try a cheese which is the least perfect, the one that looks ugly, the one with character, because that might be the one that's the most interesting. Thank you and enjoy the cheese.